Welcome back to our series on leverage. On our last video, we discussed the different types of leverage along with why and when to hire leverage. If this is your first time watching, I'm Amanda Purnell, coach with Glover U, and I'm so excited today because I'm interviewing Linzee Ciprani, the owner of Ciprani Consulting, on how to hire the right leverage. But first, I want to take time to thank you, Linzee, for meeting with me and sharing the best ways to hire. So let's
Oh,
jump right in. Why don't you start by telling me a little bit about Ciprani Consulting and your background in real estate?
yeah. Thank you for having me, Amanda. It's going to be so fun to chat through all this stuff. So background, I started in real estate years ago. It's almost 20 years ago, which is like really crazy to me because I don't feel like I'm that old. I'm sure you get it. Um, But yeah, so almost 20 years ago, I started right when the crash happened. So I learned short sales really quickly back in 2008 and so on. And I was running a team back then. And then I went on my own after about 4 or 5 years there and started my own real estate team. And when I did that, I had a bunch of people that came to me and said, "Can you help me build my, business the way that you did with the other gentleman that I worked with?" And instead of doing that, I said, "Well, you know what? Let me just create Ciprani Consulting and let me just help you." And so I started by putting systems and processes in place with teams. So I would
Mhm.
come alongside of them, implement 36 touch or implement, the like 10 years post buyer plan, and things of that nature. But then what was happening is I was having to come alongside of the operations professional that they had in there because we all know the salespeople aren't going to sit down and build their systems. And so
Mhm.
I was coming alongside of these people that were not the right fit. And so before I knew it, I was like, you know what? I should just hire the right person for you and then train them because that'll just be so much better. And so Soprani Consulting was born out of a necessity. I mean, I think no, that what wasn't in existence yet, right? And a lot of
Yeah.
recruiters will not hire for small business owners and entrepreneurs. They want to do the bigger things, the stuff where there is some money there. Um,
Mhm.
and so we started just because I had real estate experience and I was trying to help these other business owners who I'd come in contact with. And I just fell in love with it, Amanda, because I really enjoyed getting to know them and understanding their struggles and how hard it was to build these businesses. And I was like, gosh, if you just have the right person, everything's gonna be better. And so I spent a lot of years doing that on my own and then started building Soprani Consulting, where now we've got multiple people doing that. But we've been able to, by hiring the right person and putting systems and processes in place, and then sending them off to coaching and coaches like you and others, um, we've been able to help, double and triple people's businesses. So definitely passion for us.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Great. Well, let's hop right in. So we're going to start with creating a job description because I feel like that's where a lot of people, one, need to start and two, have the most trouble.
Yeah.
So what would you say are the essential components of an effective job description?
Yeah. I think if you're somebody who has never made a hire before, then going kind of a generic route and allowing, there to be kind of summaries of what the job looks like is a
Mhm.
good thing. And the reason behind that is then you bring a lot of applicants in and you can interview them and figure out what you want. So if you really don't know what you want, then go a little bit more generic, if that makes sense. If you're somebody that's hired one person and had them leave or more, I think specific is really important. And, what that means to me is like, we don't have to have every single thing on the job ad, right? Like every task, that doesn't make sense. However, you now know by just having one person in that role what worked for you, what didn't work for you, what things maybe they didn't do for you that you hated doing, right? I always call that that I hate to do list. Make that list and
Mhm.
all those
Yep.
tasks go on the job, right?
Yes.
Um, but then on top of that, like we have, for example, we have a job ad up right now for our own company for Ciprani Consulting that says if you don't want to sit in front of the computer all day and do multiple video interviews, don't even apply. Like I don't
Yep.
even want to talk to you because now I know that I've had multiple people leave. They're like, I don't want to sit behind a computer all day. Like that's not what I'm going to do. Then that's not the job for you.
Right.
So now that I've heard that a couple of times, I'm like, all right. that's got to go in bold up at the top, right? And so, I do think putting a majority of the tasks in there and having some of the things that like maybe other people didn't love in there allows you to make sure that you bring somebody in who's like, I love checklists. I love to-dos, right? I
Right.
love,
Yes.
marketing a listing. Like you want those things in there.
How do you tailor a job description to ensure that it attracts the right candidates for a specific role, especially when we're talking like real estate?
Yeah. So, again, I think like actually having some specifics around it, but having clarity around things that haven't worked. So, let's talk about real estate, right? So if you had somebody who was supposed to be a listing manager, for example, and they were able to pick the photo, order the photography, order staging, and do some of those things. But one of the biggest hurdles was like they never really understood if like the staging really looked good. They couldn't kind of understand that a little bit better, right? Like they're not somebody that can walk in and pick out a light fixture that maybe you as the agent might pick out, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
What I always tell people is like, okay, use that example, right, as something that now you get to ask that question or show them 10 different lights and be like, which one would you suggest if they were going to switch out their lights?
Yeah.
Right? Because now you have firsthand knowledge again of the things that maybe weren't working or didn't help you, right? It didn't provide
Right.
leverage.
Yes.
And so now that I know it didn't give me the proper leverage, what are those things? And let me go ahead and find that. So I think that's really important in there.
Awesome. I am going to ask you too to share some common mistakes that businesses make when writing job descriptions. And then I'm going to share with you one of mine, which is in job titles.
I love
Um, Especially in real estate, we definitely have made this mistake before
yeah.
where we hired somebody as a quote unquote marketing manager. And in fact, they were actually our listing coordinator, but we were hoping to, attract somebody that was more creative with flyers and job descriptions. And this was obviously before Canva and Chat GPT and all that fancy stuff. They did not last long in that position because they weren't satisfied with the amount of marketing. They were more looking for like a graphic designer role or a more of a digital marketing role. And this was literally listing inputs and creating flyers. So what are some other common mistakes that you see when, especially us real estate agents, are writing job descriptions?
Yeah, there's two. There's two big ones that I see. Yours is a great one. Because just to piggyback off of you, nobody knows what transaction coordinator is if they're not in real estate.
Right.
They're never going to apply to that. So you have to then say closing coordinator, you have to get a little bit more detailed on that. So like
Mhm.
we put executive assistant slash transaction coordinator. And then we'll say in the very beginning, like this is walking through steps A through Z of the closing. So once somebody goes under contract until they're done, right? And then we'll
Right.
put other things that you're in charge of. You're in charge of post closing as well, and these things. But I think that's like the job description, like remember that if it's an admin position, you should just put it up as admin and talk
Yeah.
people through the description and make sure you have those tasks in there so that they know what they're doing. One of the other things that people do, and this is the one that I see the most in real estate, is somebody will put up a director of operations or an operations manager job and they will say, I'm hiring a director of operations. And they go through the whole, I want you to run everything. I want you to create the systems, right? And they do, they want all those things. 90% of the time, the person goes in and there's no admin underneath them. And so they're not
Mhm.
directing anything. They're not an
Right.
operations manager of anything. They are 100% an executive assistant to that person. And they may grow into that, but they are not that person yet. That I will tell you in the beginning of my career, that is what we used to do for people that sometimes I thought they got to know better than me. And so I was like, let's just do it. That's fine. And then month in, these people were like, I don't want to do the executive. They need an executive assistant. They don't need me. I want to run something. And so if they're doing grunt work, we got to put somebody who actually enjoys that, who loves marking off tasks and things of that nature. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. A very similar way that I entered in real estate too. When we went to order my business cards for the first person I worked for, he goes, well, what do you want your job title to be?
Yeah.
And it was literally just pick one out of thin air, So same thing. I was a director of operations with nobody underneath me and one agent on the team.
Yeah.
So I totally understand that one 100%.
Yeah.
So let's jump over to determining fair compensation. I get this question all the time when I'm coaching agents.
Yeah.
Well, what do you pay your admins? What do you pay your executive assistant? What do you pay your buyer's agent? What do you pay this? And that's a very hard question to answer because I coach agents all over the US. So we're in different states, different markets. And I always tell them also that the job that you're going to have them do is going to be different than the job that I'm going to have them do, even if they have the same title. So, what are your strategies that you recommend for somebody to research and determine what fair compensation would be for a new hire?
Yeah, I tell people about this website all the time, but it's careeronestop.org. And that you can put in, it'll say executive assistant and secretaries most of the time, because that's just how we know, admin in the
Yeah.
world there. And in like inside sales would be telephone sales, right? Like, so we got to think through what's the other possible position called before we search. But once you have that, if you put that in and you put your area in, so city and state, then you can come up with the right compensation, or at least a median and an average, right? Because that's what we need to do. I mean, I think you can pick up the phone and call a bunch of people as well in your office and people that you know who have admin. Here's what I'm going to say about that, though. Um, there are a lot of people that I have found that will say that they pay less. I don't know what that is, but they won't say what they really pay because they don't want somebody to know that, or they're afraid that somebody might go offer what they're paying or more to their current admin. So there's definitely like a scarcity, something there.
Yeah.
Um, I can't tell you how many people call me, Amanda, and are like, well, I talked to 5 people in my office and they say that the average is 45,000 and those people have all been with them for years. And I'm like, okay, so you're in DC, like Washington, there's no way. Like it's just
Right.
45,000 and they've been there for years is really weird. And if they are, I'm going to go call all of them and I'm going to talk to them. I'll go get them a different job. Like it just, for me, um, looking at the average makes sense. Doing your homework makes sense. But for me, it's really like, okay, what is my budget? How much do I have to spend?
Mhm.
Who do I want? Am I willing to bring in somebody who's brand new to the workforce and who's young and excited and they may only be with me for a year or two, but they hopefully will get me to the next place if I make the right hire? Fine. Then yeah, then that's a lower paying salary.
Right.
If we want experience and we want 3+ years, most of those admin, like you and I connected years ago in operations, right? And I
Mhm.
followed your career, but like I think we all started talking to each other. And the moment we
Yeah.
start talking to each other, anybody with 3 years or plus of experience is 60,000 across the US most of the time is where I put it and up, and there's bonuses associated. There's all kinds of ways that you can, give more, but that's around where we start. You can find ones in 50 to 60, but that's normally like a 2 to 3 year or somebody who doesn't want to have the hard conversation.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. That ties a little bit into our next one, which is how can businesses ensure that their compensation packages are competitive with the
Mm.
industry and the region that they're in? So what are some of the other things aside from just salary that can be put in compensation packages? And I've been following you online with all your polls recently asking about, PTO and health insurance and stuff like that. So what do you see as like necessary to be able to be competitive?
Yeah, so we're talking about leverage, right? So we're
Mhm.
definitely talking about like the ops professionals in our world. We could even look at inside sales, showing partners, like any of those things are going to fall under that. And I know you guys coach brokerages as well and like the people within brokerages. And so I want to encompass this with saying that I think anytime we're building a small business, I think having other ways to compensate just ties people to that business. So if we're looking at the sales businesses, so if we're looking at teams or solo agents with one admin, I do believe that, a bonus tied to production is great. So you can do it per file. And listen, there's a lot of people that will say not to do that, Amanda, but like sometimes it's just the easier way. And it doesn't have to
Hmm.
be, it can be $25, it can be $50. It can have a range. It can be like, anything under 200,000, we're going to give you this, and 200,000 to 400,000 this. And so you can, start to figure that out. But like for me, that means you can budget that really easily. And
Right.
an agent who's running a million miles a minute, sometimes that's the best way. And that truly
Yeah.
is my answer. I know a lot of people don't agree with that, but it's just sometimes the ease of like, okay, if I did 50 transactions and I'm doing $25 per transaction, I know the amount of money they can get from that. And they should be able to help me well enough and I should be able to hold them accountable and inspect what I expect for them to do the things that allow me to make more, and then they can make more, right? So
Yeah.
like we're all in it together there.
Yeah.
But I got to have the hard and fierce conversations, which is a great book for people to read, but I have to have that fierce conversation if for some reason they're not helping me get to the next level and I feel like I'm being gypped by giving them $25, right?
Right.
So I still believe in that. Quarterly bonuses I think are great that are tied to production and I'm fine with profit obviously because we want to pay people from profit.
Hmm.
One of the biggest challenges there is like if you have personal things in there, so if you have personal expenses coming out and you're tying somebody to profit and they're doing the books and they can see those things, you are going to have an issue. So that's one of the biggest downfalls I see in real estate.
Yeah.
So that's why per file doesn't even matter, right? It's a thing. So that's another way, but I love giving bonuses on them helping us get reviews. So what's the system and the process that helps me get reviews?
Hmm.
2 phone calls, text message, and emailed, and then boom, I get a review because they followed up and the agent definitely didn't. I
Right.
love bonusing on that, and I love bonusing on referrals. So, if they bring something in, I am a believer in giving a percentage of that as long as they're a licensed agent. You can do that through
Mhm.
the market center or the office that you're in. Or you can still take that amount and put it into, the salary and have, some of that come out.
Right.
But
Yeah.
again, I just think like there's so many ways to do that. And then, helping them get more is really great. The last piece I'm going to say, because I know I talked a lot about this, but I feel like it's really important, is just don't be afraid to give people projects and to bonus them on projects, right? So like if I know if my business could have a 36 touch and I believe in my heart that that marketing plan will actually get me more business if we do it right, and I hold my assistant accountable to building it and implementing it and running it, and they get a bonus based on it,
Hmm.
I can show an ROI there. So I think that's really important too. So
Right. Yes. Yep. Awesome. Okay. So where to advertise for a job? So choosing right platforms, that can sometimes be tricky, especially like you're in it every day. We're not. If I were to have to go and hire today, I'd be calling you going, where do I put this job ad? So where are the most effective platforms for advertising for a job opening?
I think in general, Indeed is still, I mean, they have the commercials now, like they're spending the money to bring applicants to them. So I do think Indeed's great. There's a lot of applicant tracking systems, ATSs, that will push it out. So like to Indeed. So ZipRecruiter is one that'll push it out to a number of places. By the way, Indeed will do that, but Indeed is definitely one of the ones that wants to keep people in their system, if that makes sense, and
Yeah.
on their
Yeah.
system. So they do it
Hmm.
less and they ask you to pay for it.
Right.
You'll get some applicants, but if you know enough, you know that you really need to pay in order to push it out. So I would say ZipRecruiter. Wise Hire is a great one for real estate. It gives you the disc. It's one of the ones that we use because of the disc. I do believe that's just a really great snapshot of the personality. It helps me kind of weed through. It doesn't mean I don't call people that don't match the disc I want, but it does mean that I like can ask questions around like, hey, this said, you took the assessment. It says that you might be a little decisive and dominant. Do you believe that, right? Like I want to have that
Right.
conversation.
Yeah.
So I love that. And it has a values index in there too, which I think is very important. I love,
Mhm.
what does somebody value and what is, if I'm looking for an admin and they have high economic, they're
Right.
going to need to become a director of operations or something, and we're going to need to tie them to the money. Money matters to them, right? So the
Yeah.
values assessment's great too. So I love Wise Hire. I always tell people about that. Um, LinkedIn is still really great. You have to pay for LinkedIn. That's going to cost a nice little penny there. Um, but even spending just $100 for it, it literally will spend $100 of your money in one day, by the way. But like just by doing that, it pushes it out and people can see it. And so I
Yeah.
do think that that's worth it sometimes. And you can kind of, if you go through Zip and wherever, you can post it to LinkedIn for like the free part.
Mhm.
I think it's worth it. And then social media is great. And I think doing a blast, an email blast to your database when it's not like a, hey, do you want to buy a home? Like, hey, do you want to sell a home?
Right.
It's a,
Yeah.
hey, I have this need. This is who I'm looking for. Who do you know? And you're really
Hmm.
specific around what you're looking for and what your values are and all those things. Your sphere wants really badly to help you in that way. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I know from personal experience, most of my best hires have come from referrals.
yeah,
So either putting it out to my sphere or posting it on social media, somebody knew of somebody that was looking for a job and fit that missing person that I was looking for. And those have always been my best candidates.
I love it.
So, okay, let's move on to the interview process because I know that this is a big one, and a lot of people spend like 5 minutes with an applicant and they're like, "You're hired."
Yeah.
So, what are the key elements of a successful interview process?
Yeah, so this is probably the biggest reason why I would say to go to a company that helps you go through the process
Mhm.
because
Yeah,
so many people don't. I actually posted something recently where I said, on average, like if you Google it, it would say 75 to 100 hours is what you need to spend to find the right person, which to most of us, we're like, oh, like the truth is most of them spend about 3 to 4 hours, if that.
right,
And that's like, I'm gonna look at these resumes and that looks like the best one. I'm gonna call them and then I'm gonna have them come in. I'm gonna call them and speak to them for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I'm gonna get them in here. I'm gonna do my interview for an hour and then off and running I go, right?
right.
Um, I really believe that you need to put a job ad up. This is also like one of the things that I hate about recruiters. Like they're like, I have a million applicants right now. So do I. But here's the truth. We need to match the right person with the job ad and the
Hmm.
person. So like
Yeah.
just because I have somebody that I interviewed in, a certain area doesn't mean that like they're the exact right person for you, Amanda, right? So,
Yes.
we want to put that job ad up and then I really believe that it needs to sit there for a week and bring in candidates. I think if you start to call like the first two or three people, that's your first two or three people. Like you need to have a number of people. Here's what I'm going to tell you that I believe that you need a job ad or two up somewhere that bring you at least 40 candidates. Now we're going to average anywhere from 200 to 400 because we want way more,
Yeah.
at least 40. And then you go through, you look at the different resumes, you pick up the phone, you call any of them. You want to sort it, call any of the ones that you feel really good about. Ask them very specific questions like, do they match your salary? Don't bring somebody in if they're going to be way higher if you're not even going to match it. It's a total waste of time, right? Do they have like any experience in some of the things that you need them to do? And then dig in on those things, right? And don't bring people in until you really feel good about it. Or you could do it on video, right? Like you don't even have to have a phone. You can
Hmm.
schedule video interviews where you are recorded and then you can rewatch them over and over again or whatever. So I really think, having a process and sticking to it and having at least a phone screen or a video screen, then bring them in person and do a really comprehensive interview there where you ask them to like prove that they created a system, right? Like if they're like, oh yeah, I helped launch Monday.com. That's awesome. What mistakes happened? Like, what did you have to adjust? Like, did you build any of the action plans? And dig in there, you'll know if they
Hmm.
really built it or if they were just a part of it or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and so you've got to like really understand what you're looking for to know the questions. But then I believe in scenarioing them. You know that about me.
Yep. That was my next question. You're leading right into it. Like, what are your favorite and most important interview questions to ask? And
Oh yeah.
from my experience with working with Ciprani
Yeah.
Consulting, my favorite part of those interviews are the problem solving ones.
Yeah.
Um, I think especially because, one, I love seeing them and how they become like an independent thinker. Are they going to be able to actually do the job without needing me every single step of the way? But also, let's be honest, I really get a kick out of their creative avoidance. Um, there's some that you ask and it's like, you are not going to be prepared for this. You will not know this is coming. And then their answer is always, well, I always come prepared. And it's like, wait, but we just told you wouldn't be prepared. So I love the creative avoidance that people can come up with those. But so what are some of your favorite interview questions to ask?
Yeah, I love that. Well, we have a number of them, and it's funny, we came up with three that we felt really confident about with admin, and it's the three that really just it allows us to see if they're going to be what I'm going to say, are they a good enough problem solver to match real estate agents? So, I
Yeah.
mean, real estate, for anybody who even listens that's not in real estate on this, like we are problem solving at a level that I don't even think most of us get. Um, that's why so many people don't make it because they can't think outside the box. And when there's an issue or they didn't deliver on something, they can't get themselves to the next place of like, what do I need to do
Mhm.
next?
Yeah.
And that's all we do all day long in real estate. So really important. One of the ones that sounds so dumb to so many people, because most of us in real estate are like, what do you mean you wouldn't do that? But I'll just throw this one out there because it's the easiest one to ask, I think.
Yeah.
But I always say like, hey, you're working for an agent and you need to sit an open house for them. And I always say, here's the deal, admin don't normally sit open houses. However, if you get licensed, you may need to do that once in a while if we need help, right? And so I say, so you're sitting in an open house and it's a vacant house, and that means that nobody's living there. Believe it or not, I actually feel like we have to say that sometimes. And so nobody's living there. And so you get there a little bit early, but only, 5 to 10 minutes early to like get everything set up, open the windows, air it out a little bit, turn all the lights on, get the house ready to be shown. And you get in there, and the battery in the smoke detector is doing that annoying little beep. It needs new batteries. What do you do? And you just leave it.
Mhm.
And so if you have somebody in front of you that says, was there any furniture in the house? Can I get up to it? Like, is there a ladder? Like, is there a way to access it? That's a very smart human. They understand that all of the things may have been removed. Now, most people don't get there, but
Yeah.
if they, I mean, it's almost like for me, it's almost like I hire them immediately.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I want them to get up there, take the battery out, put it back up, right? Because we have showing,
Yep. Right.
and then wait until after it's done and then go back out and get batteries and replace it, right? For our client.
Yeah.
You would not believe how many people are like, I would call the homeowner and let them know. Or like some of them are like, oh, well, you can't touch that because then, this will happen. I'm like, no, no, I just told you the batteries were chirping. Like,
Right. Yeah.
you take
Yeah.
them
I
out.
love it's a safety hazard. So I wouldn't take the battery out. Or the best one we got one time was, well, I always come prepared. So I would have an extra battery in my purse. I'm like,
Yeah,
you walk around with 9-volt batteries in your purse?
yeah.
I don't,
No.
I don't. I mean, I'm a mom. I have a lot of stuff in my purse, but not a battery.
Yeah. But I even had agents, Amanda, that would sit open houses for us, and they'd come back to me as the director of operations. They'd be like, hey, the smoke detectors are going off. And I literally would look at them and be like, wow, I don't know if we can be in business together anymore. Like, why wouldn't you fix that?
Right.
Like, you're out of my life.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, so you touched on this a little bit, but I do want to dive a little deeper into personality tests.
yeah.
So, like I know Keller Williams does the KPA. Some other agents and brokerages use the DISC test or strength finders. How do
Mhm.
these help in identifying the right candidates for a position?
Yeah, I think here's the deal. So we've had people that work with us and that have very clear like been like, hey, we're gonna give these 6 assessments. And I'm like, okay. I love assessments. I think if it's a candidate that loves assessments, awesome. But if we're gonna do assessments and then not move them into an interview, then it's really hard to give an assessment because then you're discriminating
Mhm.
against their results.
Right.
Which, that's not a thing yet, but I mean, it is, right? It's
Right.
an
Yeah.
issue. And so what I would say is I believe if you know yourself well on paper through those assessments and you know what you need in a hire through assessments, to utilize those is really great. And then you need to validate them. So if an assessment says that, you are going to be somebody that like nobody knows if you're upset, right? You hold it in and whatever. If the assessment says that, we need to ask them, is that true or false? And
Right.
it may not have, got them right. Like all these assessments are assessments, like they're not perfect. And
Hmm.
so, we need to be able to ask them the question around that, see what they say, and then validate it. So ask more questions around that. Tell me about a time that you had a boss where you got really upset and you did say something. What did that conversation look like? And then watch them explain it. If they don't have a lot of details around some of that, like that it's probably not something they're going to do. And so, but I would say if you're going to run them, definitely ask questions around them, whatever one you're doing, and then use it as a tool, but not the end all be all.
Awesome. I love that. Okay. So onboarding and retention. So how does an effective onboarding process impact employee retention and performance?
I think it's everything. I think that's why I always say that we're not coaching. Like you guys are the coaches. And we love you guys for that. I really believe that bringing somebody in and training them properly is the best way for retention. The times that even me, when I bring in people and like I have had people come in and be trained by other people that weren't like me or our main trainers, and then notoriously it's like, well, I never got taught that. And if I'm like, well, I don't know if you ever got taught that, because if I go back to my checklist and it's not marked off or
Mhm.
documented that, yeah, like then I have to assume we didn't train them on that right. And then I
Right.
can't hold them to that standard. And it just causes so much friction when you don't have a checklist and an onboarding system that is followed and documented. Like it's just such a mess. So I believe it's really important. And I really think, knowing what matters in the job and having those things really, written out, having videos that go along with it, Amanda, like
Mhm.
those matter so much. And so some of my favorite people that onboard and have built companies that are in the ops world, like some of them have use their CRM where it's like, here's a task, and like the agent or the admin has to mark off like, yeah, I watched this
Yes.
video and yes, I did this. And
Yep.
or like just to use Glover as an example, like I love the sales rocket,
Yep.
right? Yep.
Yep.
That you guys have, because it has like these are the things you're going to go over, and oh hey, by the way, there's an assessment at the end to make sure you got it. Like that
Mhm.
drills it in. There are reasons for those things.
Yes.
When you don't have those things, I think a lot of people are set up for failure. And if you don't have that stuff and it's not marked off and utilized, it gives them the ability to blame you and use that narrative, which matters. I think not
Mhm.
that you're going to go say things, but like you can at least sleep at night going, no, we went over this and then we went over it again. And so I
Yeah.
also believe in weekly meetings where you're talking about things. So like Keller Williams has the cash talk. A number of other people have like, there's so many other brokerages that have similar things. Um, Weekly meetings where you're talking about what did you learn this week? Where do you feel like your biggest holes are? What do you need help with next week? Like, what do you feel like you need more explanation? And documenting that matters a lot. So,
Yeah. Wonderful. And that's something that we'll go much deeper into on the next video in this series. But right now I want to shift over to the hot new topic right now. And it's been going for a while now, but adapting to remote hiring. How has the shift to remote work affected the hiring process? And what adjustments have you seen companies having to make to adapt to a lot of people still wanting to be remote?
yeah. You know what's interesting? I just talked about this today on some of my social media. There's such a massive disconnect right now there. I don't, we have maybe one or two jobs out of our like 40 some that we're hiring for that are remote. And it's because they're
Mhm.
like a TC company or whatever, and they're
Right.
all remote. Um, like there's so many teams that want people back in and they want people back in the office. They want them present. There's a synergy there. I think a lot of people found that they were missing it and culture started to suffer. And that is, I mean, there's just been so much movement in the job force in the last couple of years. And so I do think we're coming out of that. I think we've seen a big push in employers back to office, and there's still
Mhm.
so many employees that want remote. So here's what I'm going to say. If you have great systems and things are documented really well, remote work is awesome because you can get somebody cheaper in a different area that might have a lot of experience. It's really awesome. If there are ways for them to communicate, like Zoom rooms and just be able to talk to each other and talk to others
Yeah.
like that are in the company, I think that it's a great way to hire talent all over the place. They're still going to feel disconnected. They are, if you've got people that are meeting together in the office and they're the only ones that aren't, there's this feeling of like they're not a part of things.
Right.
So it's hard. I just want to preface it with that. But what I'm going to say is, there are certain positions and there are certain things and certain tasks that, especially in real estate, somebody in person doesn't need to do. And so, whether you're looking at the Philippines or India or wherever, or even in the US based, just a lower salary, because this is all your budget allows for, consider the remote because there's so many people that want that. Another like thing that you just have to think about is like, what does the accountability look like? How do you have those conversations? Are they home with a kid all day? Like, is that okay with
Mhm.
you? Is it not? And like to
Yeah.
know those things and understand those things are really important. To ask them is very difficult in the interview process. So I think, understanding all those things and where some of the downfalls can lie, helps you make the best decisions for your business.
Awesome. So in my previous video, we talked about leverage by hiring someone to allow your business to grow. But another piece of leverage that I didn't cover in that video is leveraging through hiring a company such as Ciprani Consulting. Now, I know the answer to this because I've used your company for leverage multiple times. But for the viewers, can you tell us a little bit about what that type of leverage looks like? What does it look like to hire Ciprani Consulting? So we've gone through all the different steps, but this is still just way more than I want to do. I don't have time for this. Just find me somebody. What does that kind of look like?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think we make better hires if we cast a really wide net and a big net. And so at the end of the day, a company like Soprani can put more money behind your job and push it out to more places because they're doing, 40 plus jobs at a time, right? 400 hires a year. So we have special deals with all the people that we push out to, right? So that just helps to bring in more applicants. I don't ever think that's a bad thing, Amanda. So like
Right.
bring in your sphere, bring it, put it on your social, bring in as many as possible, and let's go through that whole thing so that we can dwindle it down to the few that we feel like are really good and then have a hard decision. Um, I think if you're somebody who needs to move really fast, we can help you do that. But I also still feel like we want to hire the right person, not the, hey, this person showed up within 2 days and now we're going to hire them. I
Mhm.
love having 3 to 4 people that we're pinning against each other if possible, at least two, so that we make the right hire and a good hire. And so I think, utilizing us, we priced ourselves really low. We are not the norm like normal recruiters where we're a percentage of the salary. That just is hard for small business owners. And those companies, the recruiters will actually, negotiate a contract higher sometimes in order to get paid more. So we didn't want to have any of those things. We wanted it to
Mhm.
be really easy, a budget, we wanted people to be able to budget it properly and figure out how to hire with us for multiple hires for the year. And we hold them accountable to those things, right? We're having weekly check-ins for the most part. We're talking to people weekly and we're in it with them, and we have the ability to make a hire pretty quickly because we're just their hiring team. And so we are their leverage. We're not the end all be all. I always say like there's no perfect solution out there. Otherwise we'd be very, very wealthy. But There's no perfect solution. It's us coming together and doing the work together, but only bringing you into the part that's needed. So,
Yeah, awesome. And if somebody wanted to get a hold of you and hire you guys, how do they do that?
yeah, you can go to our website, which is cipraniconsulting.com, which is Ciprani, so no extra I there. Or you can email us at team@cipraniconsulting.com and we'll get back to you and get you scheduled and kind of take you through what we do and how we do it and go from there.
Awesome. Okay, last question. What is the most valuable piece of advice that you can give a business owner who's starting the hiring process?
Yeah. I think it is really sitting down and taking a deep breath and writing all the things down that you truly don't want to do anymore that you know will free you up to be able to do other things. And so the I hate to do list is always my first thing. I think it's really easy for somebody to take somebody else's job ad and just put it up and then not really have clarity around what's going on. But I think if you can sit down, figure out the things that really zap your energy, and then put a job ad up for those things, there is somebody out there that gives them so much energy, and you will just, there's
Mhm.
like a yin to a yang thing that happens there, and it's really awesome. So I think being clear around that and figuring it out helps you through the whole process. So
Awesome. Lindsay, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for taking time. And keep an eye out for my next video, which covers how to support and develop your hire and how to grow your business through leadership. If you're enjoying this series, please like and subscribe for more.